Switzerland is a landlocked country in the very heart of Europe. Hi, I'm Jake de Boer and this is the Travel Magazine. We'll start today's show in Zurich, the country's financial capital. Then on to picturesque Lucerne with its beautiful Capel Bridge, originally constructed in the year 1333. And then to the federal capital of Bern with its well-known clock tower. And of course, we must visit some chocolate factories.
Switzerland is smaller in size than the province of Nova Scotia and only slightly larger than the state of Vermont. Surrounded by France, Germany, Austria, and Italy, it has been forced, since the Middle Ages, to develop its own particular national identity and economic resourcefulness. That complex identity, including Switzerland's hard-won traditions of multiculturalism, religious tolerance, and political neutrality, has grown in force despite the regional makeup of the country and the pressures of partisanship from without. Zurich, located near the German border, is Switzerland's largest city. Like Geneva to the south, which is famed as the European headquarters of the United Nations and the International Red Cross, Zurich is the city with which most people identify Switzerland. Its stately medieval architecture along the Limmat River reflects the orderliness and restraint of the Swiss character. The Swiss penchant for organization and efficiency is evident not only in the town planning, but in the international reputation of Zurich's financial operations. Certainly the financial capital of Switzerland, perhaps even of Europe, Zurich boasts crucial institutions like the Swiss Credit Bank and the Swiss Bank Corporation, with a long-standing traditions of large reserves, political neutrality, freely transferable currency, and financial acumen. The head offices of many large European and international corporations, especially insurance companies, are located here as well.
We'll be back with more of the Travel Magazine right after this.
An elaborate network of clean and comfortable trains, streetcars, buses and boats make it possible to move easily without inconvenient delays. Interchangeable tickets further facilitate such movement. Despite the many difficulties for travel inherent in the geography itself, the Swiss postal motor coaches serve to take travelers where trains are unable to go. Originally designed to carry mail on a same-day delivery service within the country. These distinctive yellow buses still have the right-of-way on difficult mountain roads, a fact which is signaled by their color and their peculiar three-toned musical horns. Whether climbing steep mountain grades or winding leisurely through the lowland countryside, these buses are a familiar sight to the Swiss. South of Zurich, at the mouth of the river Reuss, is the old walled city of Lucerne. Originally founded as a monastic settlement in 840 AD, it became, in succession, a fishing village, market town, a walled city-state in the 14th century, and finally, capital of its canton, which is also called Lucerne. 9 of the original towers of the fortress wall remain intact today. Closer to the Lake of Lucerne, the more modern sections of the city suggest the compatible and picturesque way in which past and present live together in Switzerland today. Both modern and traditional statues distinguish the large plaza in front of Lucerne's Kunsthaus and Concert Hall, where each year since 1938 an international music festival has taken place. One of Lucerne's most interesting landmarks is the Kappel Bridge, originally constructed in 1333. Into the gables of its roof are set over 100 paintings by the 17th century artist Heinrich Werkmann. For centuries, the bridge has provided comfort and pleasure to Lucerne's inhabitants as they walk across the Reuss. This paddle wheeler, which is only one of the many that ply the Swiss lakes, is named after Uri, one of the 3 original cantons which in 1291 AD banded together to establish the beginnings of the Swiss Confederation. Far above the Lake of Lucerne, a cogwheel train slowly climbs Mount Pilatus. The grade of this slope is 48 degrees, the steepest climb in Switzerland and one of the steepest in the world. Powered by electricity, the cogwheel train provides another example of the Swiss genius for the mechanical sciences and the Swiss penchant for adapting to their landscape. Each train has 4 gear-like wheels, 2 per side, which mesh with a specially built track, providing the necessary traction to climb the slope and a fail-safe braking system in case of power failure. A trip to Mount Pilatus is made even more interesting by the chance to go one way by cogwheel train and the other by cable car. Each climbs a different slope to meet at the mountain station. 1 hour south of Lucerne, on the way to Interlaken, is the colorful village of Brienz, a typical town of the Oberland, that is, the Bernese Alps. Brienz is distinguished by its deep blue lake, its nearby mountains, its picturesque chalet-style architecture, and its well-earned reputation as a center for wood carving and violin making. The lively carving of the goat boy blowing his horn symbolizes a traditional farming activity of the area in a mood that suggests the almost festive atmosphere of Brienz itself. So too do the geraniums so many people in the village use to decorate their balconies. In Brienz, despite the pressures of industrialization and mechanization, local artisans still carry on the painstaking wood-carving traditions of their forefathers. The extraordinary touch and craftsmanship of this artisan in capturing the likenesses of his townsfolk makes him seem a very Rembrandt among woodcarvers. At Interlaken, in the shadow of the Jungfrau, a festival is held each summer to celebrate the legend of Wilhelm Tell, the forest marksman who, in defying the whims of a tyrant, shot an arrow through an apple on his son's head. Local actors reenact this dramatic story, which, above all others, celebrates the deep-seated Swiss spirit of freedom. It was, ironically, a German playwright who never set foot in Switzerland, Friedrich Schiller, who magnified the heroic significance of the Tell legend in his play Wilhelm Tell, written in 1804. Though there is now much doubt about the authenticity of the story, Wilhelm Tell's courageous acts have become an indelible symbol for the Swiss imagination. This is evident in the country's choice of the crossbow as its official trademark for all Swiss products.
Korn wächst dort in langen, schönen Auen, und wie ein Garten ist das Land zu schauen.
Ei Gott, warum steigen wir denn nicht geschwind hinab in dieses schöne Land, statt dass wir uns hier einfinden und plaudern?
Das Land ist schön und gütig wie der Himmel, doch dies bebauen, sie genießen nicht den Segen, den sie pflanzen.
Wohnen sie nicht frei wie du, auf ihrem eigenen Erbe?
The canton or province of Bern in west-central Switzerland is one of the country's most fertile agricultural areas. Typically, its way of life is more cautious and deliberate, less hurried, and cosmopolitan than that of places like Zurich and Geneva. Farming, where it can be made worthwhile, is always a serious business in Switzerland. Because of its mountain ranges, nearly 1/4 of the country's 26,000 square kilometers are unproductive, a virtual wasteland to the farmers, even as they are a magnificent attraction to the visitor. In addition, as the Swiss writer Max Frisch once wrote, Switzerland lives on the knife edge of its delicate climate. Thus, given its high density of population, its limited arable land, and its climate, Switzerland must at the best of times import food to sustain its more than 6 million inhabitants. The capital of the canton is the market city of Bern, where regular market days on Tuesdays and Saturdays are major events. the city of Bern is more than a cantonal capital and market city. It is, in fact, the federal capital of Switzerland. The federal buildings rise high above the market square, bearing the Latin inscription Curia Confederatione Helvetica, the Senate House of the Confederation of Switzerland. Since 1848, when the Swiss Federal Constitution was adopted, the Federal Council has met in Bern, perhaps the most typically Swiss of all the country's cities. Bern means bear, and this fact is proudly celebrated in many aspects of the city's life. The Bernese flag carries the heraldic image of the bear. Another tradition of considerable note is the city's famous bear pit, which has operated continuously since the 16th century. As legend has it, the city was named by its founders because a bear was the first animal to be killed on a hunt near the site of what was then a military outpost. Whatever the case, as with Wilhelm Tell, we recognize that legends are no less true for being based on colorful and dramatic rather than actual or provable facts. Through the polished doors of the Rathaus, we enter the cantonal government chambers of Bern. Cantons in Switzerland are like states or provinces, but their historical roots go much deeper than those of Swiss Confederation itself. The cantons are in fact the strongest governing bodies in Switzerland, each having its own constitution.
The Travel Magazine will be back with more of Switzerland right after this.
The most famous of Bern's buildings is its extraordinary clock tower. It took 4 years to build and was completed in 1530. A single Bernese artisan, Caspar Brunner, designed and assembled the operations. His work was of such a high quality that most of the clock's original parts are still in operation. Below the clock face is a grouping of evocative figures, the rotating circle of bears in various postures, and of course, the solemn figure of Kronos, Old Father Time, whose slow-moving mouth chimes the hour. Through a complicated series of gears, pulleys, weights, and chimes, the clock tells the time of day, the date, day of the week, phase of the moon, and sign of the zodiac. Lacking a variety of natural resources, the Swiss have inventively fallen back on their genius for precise and effective machinery. For centuries, watchmaking has been a mark of Swiss craftsmanship and was carried out not in large urban factories, but in small, local operations throughout the north and west of the country. Inevitably, however, large factories like this one are becoming more and more a necessity in the ongoing struggle to compete on the international market. Similarly, Swiss milk chocolate, with its worldwide reputation, is increasingly being produced in highly mechanized factories. Strategically on an elbow bend of the River Are, Bern is also the home of one of Europe's most impressive Gothic cathedrals, built early in the 15th century.